I talk about having followers on my channel, and I'm really looking at how can we be, what kind of a name would my followers want? And I really think everything I research and look into, as much as folks think it's cancer, because I wrote that book about my mom and her cancer journey, really the reason I started into the ketogenic journey was because of brain. So I'm playing with the idea of calling my followers neurons, because we're all kind of nerdy. They like the science, but it's that brain function that it really motivates me. It's one of my top default. If I have a time to read about an article, it's going to be how's the brain working and what other ways can I do it to, what other things can I do to help those brains work better. All right, so let's focus back in on what our topic is tonight, which is if you've got some peer pressure, we have 5 tricks to say no to carbs. And I'll tell you, this isn't just for carbs, but man, I had some fun writing this, and I've been bantering this topic around from my team a little bit over the last couple of weeks. So again, if you could put in a comment for what is your favorite way that you've said no when somebody offered you carbohydrates, kind of the good ones like pancakes with syrup, or you go to the office party and there's cookie and cake. What is your favorite way to say no? So I've got five tips for you on how to say no. The first way we're going to start is the polite way. We are, if nothing else, in South Dakota, we are Minnesota nice. If you don't know what that means, our neighbors in Minnesota have a long-standing sitcom, kind of a parallel to the movie Fargo, where we kind of make fun of our Norwegian Midwest behavior, and there is a mythical town near Lake Wobegon where all the women are smart, all the men are handsome, and all the children are above average. But in that place, they are so polite, they sometimes forget to have an opinion. So we're going to start with the Midwestern option, which is polite. A no thank you, a no thanks could do, and many times you can get away with that. However, carbs, especially in a holiday setting, when it's a special treat, you'll usually get a little pushback if they are ingrained that this carbohydrate that I'm about to give you or share with you is a valued part of not just the journey of having made this for you, and I'm showing you how much I love you, but it marks this identity that I make this every year and I expect you to take it. When we look at some of the tricks that I do before going out to these parties is adding ketones to my circulation. I'm just as vulnerable as anybody that there are some traditions that I really like, but if I have ketones in circulation before I walk into the temptation, I do much better. So, if you see on the show and if you follow me on Instagram, I post my numbers when I'm fasting, and I try to do it on the show just so people see this is the real deal. Checking your numbers is part of the accountability we all need. But if I get a number up into the 1.5 to 2 range, it's almost like I don't want to eat. So the other option, oops, that didn't quite fit on the slide the way I wanted it to. Let me start with something savory, not sweet. So if you're being offered something that is high carb, yes, you're going to get pleasure from that. There's no doubt about it. But if you can add fat, if you can put fat in first, whether that's, cold sliced meat, some cheese, even some avocado or other bacon, find bacon and use that high-fat food to register with your system, getting it into that lower part of your stomach and the first part of your small intestine to give feedback to your brain that you really don't need any more food or you're not really hungry. Carbohydrates don't send that message, only fat does. And looking at the Midwest polite is number 5. Number 4 is allergy. This is one of my favorites, actually, and a patient used this, and I've totally copied it and told it to other patients. I talk about people being allergic to carbs. So you're presented with, let's take one of my favorites, caramels, the kind that take forever to make in the kitchen. If I've tried doing this a few times, and I don't enjoy it, so I must be doing something wrong making caramels because they never turned out good. So I loved it when people would bring caramels at this holiday season, but this is dangerous, yeah. And what I've learned to say is, oh, I'm allergic to that. But I have patients who first taught me how to do this, and they've said, yep, I'm allergic to that. Carbs and I don't get along. And if you've been on the ketogenic diet and you fall off the bandwagon and then you add a bunch of carbohydrates in, need I say more that that trip to the toilet will haunt you again. That flushing of your gut when you put a whole bunch of carbohydrates in after not having them for a while. They feel bloated. They feel swollen. And you're really not lying when it comes to allergy. Your system is looking at this infusion of a whole bunch of sugar, and it does swell from the inside out. The other parallel to this allergic reaction is, my doc said I can't have that. Doctor's orders, I can't have those right now. Using your medical team as part of your support system. This doctor says you shouldn't have carbohydrates to that level. And even though I'm not your doctor, you can use this as a way that says, doc says I need to watch that. I need to not have that right now. And see what reaction you get. Remember that when you're delivering these comments, it is so much better if it's a little bit playful. You get snarky, which by the end of this, you're going to see some snarky. But start out playful. You're going to get much further in life. As I am a mom of 3 teenage boys and a teenage foreign exchange daughter, playful wins. As soon as you get snarky, you lose. All right, so number 3. Take it spiritual. If nothing else scares people in the Midwest, not only are we polite, but we will lean on our spirituality in the public like nobody, like no other place I've seen. You're at the winter solstice, and whatever your faith is, you could probably find a ritual that says, you know what, I am fasting and praying. I can't do that right now. Please don't tempt my spirituality. As I look at times of fasting, it isn't an accident that nearly every culture tags this time of not eating to a prayerful or reflective time. But spirituality scares off a lot of people. You get a plate of cookies coming at you, you can identify it as the devil almost, because it's super tempting. You know it's going to taste great, and I'll tell you, you should start praying out loud sometimes, like, oh, Lord help me, please do not bring that any closer to me. I am fasting and praying right now. And it's such a weird thing that you'll often spook away the people that have either never done that or, they don't have any understanding of why you would do that. So don't be afraid to reach for spirituality, even if it's a brief moment of prayer. You can at least have it as a deterrent. All right, number 2. So we've got polite Midwesterners. You've got an allergic reaction that you can use your doctor a little bit for. Reach into your spirituality and tell them you're fasting and praying through something, and those sweets just don't belong in you. But nothing speaks louder than identifying this as your drug of choice and that you are in therapy for this. Addiction to carbohydrates. There are several articles out there and lots of brain studies. Again, something I care a lot about, that says you are addicted when you crave those carbohydrates, when you have dreams about them, when those cookies get a little close and you can feel salivation. And then as she walks away before you got a bite, you get a little angry. That moment is all the same patterning that happens when people get addicted to alcohol or other illicit drugs. That process of addiction is not fake news. That actually is real. So use it in the moment to try and say no, that, I'm in therapy. You should back away. Take those and back them away from me. Using that as a way to, if nothing else, startle them. Addiction is real, and the carbohydrate addict is is just as vulnerable to falling into their trap of rewarding the brain at wrong times. I do like to point out that if you do fall off the wagon, if you do end up with a bite or two of cookies, we've all done what's one more cookie? I already fell off the wagon. What's one more cookie? I already fell off the wagon. What's some frozen ice cream, other traditions that happen at the holidays? What's one caramel? I'll just have another. I like to point out that first bite, the first bite has almost 70% of the dopamine that's associated with the reward. If you can possibly think through that, now I'm not very good at it. I have to say no completely because it's just better for me. But if I do, if I'm in a safe place and I've got my husband near me saying, if I start, can you just help me? That usually does not go well for him. But you do get the rewards of addiction within the first bite is where most of that dopamine comes from. So I don't know if that helps you. So the last thing is to go New Yorker. So as you look at the opposite of the Midwest, we look at the folks from New York that come to South Dakota, and they find that they've never met such polite people. When we go to New York, we've never met so many people that yell, honk, and say obscenities to other people. I've got lots of fans out there, and if you've been watching the show, you know that I'm newly licensed in New York. And I do think I would have to find an immersion therapy for the cultural differences of how communities are different. But if they come at you with those carbs and you've been polite, you've tried the doctor excuse, you've used a little spirituality, you've even touched on the addiction, and they're still offering you carbs, you have my permission to go New Yorker. That's my statement to show you that the process isn't easy as you look at changing behaviors and folks that are addicted to carbohydrates. We are going to